Let me tell you something that still makes me shake my head. Even after all these years, it started with a joke. The kind of joke only a rich man thinks is funny, especially when he's got an audience and too much expensive whiskey in his glass. Richard Harrington, tech mogul, self-made millionaire, surrounded by his board in that oak-paneled study that always smelled faintly of old money and fresh contract sheet, was on a roll, holding court and showing off. Translate this, and my salary is yours, he laughed, waving a thick contract in the air, like he was tossing breadcrumbs to a flock of pigeons. All eyes slid toward me. Elena Vasquez, standing quietly as ever, holding a silver tray in hands that had wiped more surfaces and held more secrets than anyone in that room could guess. But I was used to being invisible in that house. Decades will teach you how. Richard pressed on. I'm serious, Elena. Our translators can't even handle this one, and it's worth almost 400 grand me whole monthly take-home. If you can do it, the money's yours. His friends howled. Diane Winters, the CFO, tried to sound gentle. Richard, don't tease the help, but she was laughing too. I glanced at the document, dense Mandarin characters, technical diagrams, margins crammed with jargon, and for a moment my hands trembled, not out of fear, but something else, something hotter. He barely noticed, just waved his hand. 5 o'clock tomorrow. You'll bring it back then. I nodded, kept my tone perfectly flat. Will there be anything else this evening, Mr. Harrington? Just stock the bar. We'll be up late, celebrating. That was my cue, so I slipped out, the laughter trailing after me like the last song at a bad party. The carpet under my shoes cost more than my year's salary, but I barely felt it as I made my way to the kitchen, the only sanctuary I'd ever had in that mansion. I laid the contract on the cold marble countertop, staring at the maze of characters. 20 years in America, 20 years caring for this family, watching Richard's kids turn from toddlers to college grads, holding his wife's hand when she passed, and yet, here I was just the maid. I took out my phone, snapped a photo of the contract, and sent a message. It's me. I need your help. When you've survived as long as I have, you learn who you can trust, and Professor Lin had always answered when it mattered. I worked through my chores, made sure the bar sparkled, then drove home 12-year-old Toyota, the kind that blends in like I always did. My apartment was small, but clean, the kind of place where you keep your real treasures hidden. I changed out of my uniform, sat at my battered desk, and emailed the document to Professor Lin. I'm sorry for the late hour, but I have an urgent translation. Anything you can do, I'd be grateful. After sending it, I pulled out my leather notebook, the one no one ever saw. It was filled with languages, notes, old memories. Before the world came crashing down, before I ran, I'd been Dr. Elena Vasquez, linguistics professor, specialist in East Asian business translations. But that life died when I left Venezuela. Here, I was just the help. My phone buzzed at 2:17 a.m. Professor Lin. Fascinating document, technical quantum computing agreement, highly specialized. Need help with any terms? I smiled for the first time that night. We worked back and forth through the darkness, piecing together meaning. By dawn, I had not only translated the contract, but highlighted every clause that made my stomach turn, stuff about backdoors, unrestricted access, things hidden in technicalities that could gut a company if you didn't know what to look for. I printed 2 copies, one plain translation, one annotated with the landmines. Caught 2 hours sleep. Then I was back at the Harrington estate before sunrise, moving through the motions, breakfast, laundry, all the while thinking about what I just uncovered. Richard and his guests finally stumbled into the kitchen around 11, faces puffy with hangovers, looking at me like nothing had changed. Elena, he called, you can just return those papers now. I set the translated documents on the table. I've completed the translation, Mr. Harrington. For a second, I saw genuine confusion cross his face. You what? The contract, I said, and I've highlighted some concerns you might want to review. Silence fell, heavy and awkward. Diane took the documents, flipping through them, her lips moving as she read. She's right. Richard, these clauses could have destroyed us. How do we miss this? Richard looked at me like he'd never really seen me before. Where did you learn all this? He stammered. I was a professor in Venezuela, I said simply, before circumstances changed. I focused on Mandarin technical translation at Beijing University. But here, I clean your house. He slumped. How much do we pay you? 52,000 a year, plus benefits. He closed his eyes, ran his hand through his hair. You just saved this company from a disaster. Why would you do that, after the way I treated you? I thought about my answer, about 20 years of being a shadow. Because what happens to this company matters to everyone who depends on it, including me. Richard sat down, the weight of the moment pressing the air flat. I never even knew where you were from. I never asked. Venezuela, I repeated. I had to start over here. Your late wife gave me a chance when I needed it most. He nodded. She had better judgment than me. That joke, I am sorry, it was cruel. It was a power play, I answered not unkindly. But I knew my place. Or I thought I did. He stood up, the mask finally off his face. The deal's a deal. For 100,000. And I want to offer you a position something more fitting, working with our legal team, on your terms. I hesitated. I need to stay anonymous. My family's still at risk. And one more thing, no more jokes at the staff's expense. Ever. He nodded, shame and gratitude written all over him. You have my word. 3 months later, my life looked nothing like before. My name was finally on an office door. Elena Vasquez, Director of International Linguistics and Cultural Affairs. Though some days, I kept the nameplate in the drawer, still getting used to being seen. I worked with legal, scanning for the fine print that could topple empires. Richard brought me coffee now, just the way I liked it. Our Singapore deal went through, the company thriving, and he told me more than once, we'd have lost it all if not for you. That day, he handed me a package inside, the nameplate and a note. Your choice whether to use this. Either way, you are seen now. So here's the thing. For 20 years, I live in the shadows of someone else's story. One translation, one joke taken too far, and I stepped into the light, not because I wanted recognition, but because I knew what it cost to be overlooked. Maybe that's what justice really is, seeing people, not just for what they do, but for who they are. But what would you have done? If someone gave you a chance to rewrite the rules, would you take it or keep hiding behind the curtain, where it's safe? I'll leave that to you. If this story hit a nerve, share your thoughts about what's fair, what's right, and whether you think justice ever really finds the people who deserve it.